Why most people quit before their breakthrough. Chunk. There's a moment in every person's life when the world goes quiet, when the noise of doubt, distraction, and comparison fades, and you're left facing only one question: how much longer can I hold on? If you've ever chased a dream, a real dream, one that demanded blood, sweat, sacrifice, and self-respect, then you know this moment well. It's the moment when everything inside you wants to quit. When your mind whispers that maybe you're not built for this. When struggle feels endless and success feels imaginary. When the path gets steep, the nights get heavy, and your belief starts to fracture under the weight of waiting. But here's the truth most people never understand. Your breakthrough doesn't happen when you feel strong. It happens when you feel broken, but refuse to stop. The world remembers the greats: Edison, Ford, Carnegie, Lincoln, Disney. Because they crossed a line most people never even reach. Not the line of talent, not the line of intelligence, not the line of privilege, the line of endurance. Most people quit before their breakthrough, not because the dream was too big, but because their patience was too small. Not because destiny denied them, but because discipline deserted them. Not because the journey was impossible, but because they walked away one step before the tide was ready to turn. And if you listen closely to life, you'll notice something. Breakthroughs never arrive early. They arrive after you've been tested. Life checks your hunger before it feeds your dreams. It checks your loyalty before it reveals its secrets. It checks your willingness to grow before it rewards your effort. It's no different than the laws of nature. A seed doesn't sprout the moment you plant it. It sits underground, in darkness, applying pressure against the soil. The roots grow long before the stem breaks the surface. Everything happens where you can't see it, and that's what destroys most people. They assume nothing is happening just because they can't see progress. They mistake the invisible phase for a dead end. You must understand something Napoleon Hill discovered while interviewing the most successful people of his time. Every great achievement goes through a silent season. A period where you've done the work, planted the seed, made the sacrifices, but nothing blooms yet. This silent season is where champions are born and quitters are revealed. Because in this season, you're forced to rely on belief instead of evidence. You're forced to trust the process instead of your emotions. You're forced to keep going without applause, without validation, without any signs that you're even moving forward. And that is where most people fall, not because they lacked potential, but because they lacked patience. Not because they lacked desire, but because they lacked endurance. Not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked faith in the unseen. Most people quit because they confuse discomfort with defeat. But discomfort isn't defeat. It's direction. It's the universe telling you, this is where the old you dies and the new you emerges. You don't grow when it's easy. You grow when you're exhausted, uncertain, frustrated, and everything in you is screaming for relief. Because that pressure, that internal war, is the birthplace of transformation. Look at history. Edison failed more than 10,000 times before the light bulb worked. 10,000 moments where most people would have said, maybe this isn't meant for me. But Edison understood something. Every failure was not a setback. It was data. It was refinement. It was progress disguised as struggle. Henry Ford was rejected by investors, laughed at by competitors, and dismissed as a man chasing a childish fantasy. But he kept moving, kept failing, kept learning, because he saw something the world didn't yet understand. The assembly line, mass production, affordable transport. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. His first studio went bankrupt. His ideas were mocked. But he refused to quit, because the vision inside him was louder than the noise around him. You see, the giants of history are not defined by genius. They're defined by grit, by the refusal to surrender during the silent season, by an almost unreasonable belief in their mission. But here's the part nobody tells you. These people weren't special. They weren't superhuman. They didn't have supernatural willpower. They were simply willing to endure what most people won't. They were willing to feel lost and keep going. Willing to face rejection and keep believing. Willing to be criticized, misunderstood, doubted, and still push forward. Willing to look unreasonable, obsessed, unrealistic. Because the purpose inside them demanded movement. Most people quit because they can't handle being misunderstood. They can't handle waiting. They can't handle being uncomfortable. They can't handle being alone with their dream long enough for it to grow. They crave results, not patience. Validation, not discipline. Comfort, not character. And that's why they fall. Because success isn't built on comfort, it's built on character. And character is forged through challenge, not praise. Everything you want, the freedom, the wealth, the confidence, the life you envision in your heart, sits on the other side of perseverance. But perseverance only shows up when motivation leaves. It shows up in the mornings when you don't want to get out of bed. It shows up on the days when the effort feels pointless. It shows up in the nights when you question everything, your path, your progress, your worth. Perseverance is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't inspire Instagram quotes. It doesn't feel good, but it is the only doorway to breakthrough. And here's the part most forget. Your breakthrough has a schedule, but you don't get to see it. You don't get a countdown clock. You don't get warnings. You don't get guarantees. You only get one instruction. Keep going, not blindly, not recklessly, but consistently, intentionally, strategically, and with a mind trained to see adversity as a signal, not a threat. Because adversity isn't proof you're failing. It's proof you're close. The closer you get to a breakthrough, the harder life pushes back. Not to stop you, but to stretch you into someone worthy of receiving what you're asking for. Every dream comes with a price. Every goal demands a new version of you. Every breakthrough requires a breakdown, not to destroy you, but to reshape you. And when you understand this, when you embrace the pain instead of resisting it, when you stop running from discomfort and start running toward it, you stop quitting. You stop hesitating. You stop doubting. You start rising. And something powerful happens once you rise. You realize the battle was never against the world. It was always against your own limits. Every obstacle you faced, every delay that felt unfair, every closed door that stung your pride. They were not punishments. They were preparation. Life wasn't trying to break you. It was trying to build the version of you who could hold the success you were praying for. Because, let's be honest, success isn't fragile. Success isn't light. Success isn't kind to the unprepared. Success demands emotional endurance. It demands clarity of purpose. It demands self-control. It demands resilience, the kind that doesn't tremble just because life shook the ground beneath you. Most people quit before their breakthrough because they treat success like a reward instead of a responsibility. They think the universe owes them something. They think showing up for a few weeks is enough. They think a single good month of discipline compensates for years of procrastination. But success does not respond to occasional effort. It responds to continuous commitment. Think of a blacksmith. He heats the metal. He strikes it. It doesn't take shape immediately. He heats it again. He strikes it again and again, until the metal surrenders its old form and becomes what he intended it to be. This is how life molds you. Through repeated trials, repeated tests, repeated friction, repeated pressure, you don't become strong by avoiding heat. You become strong by staying in the fire long enough to transform. That's why Napoleon Hill wrote extensively about persistence. He discovered something profound while studying the world's top achievers. Persistence is the single most common trait among the successful, and the single most lacking trait among the unsuccessful. It isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It isn't education. It isn't background. It's the ability to stay when others leave. The ability to keep going when progress is invisible. The ability to tighten your discipline when life loosens your confidence. Hill. And told a story, one that's been repeated for decades, and about a man named R.U. Darby. Darby invested heavily in digging for gold. During the Colorado Gold Rush, he drilled relentlessly. He found promising ore. He kept going. But after months of no results, he gave up. He sold his equipment to a junk collector and walked away. The junk collector hired an engineer to inspect the mine. And within 3 feet, they struck one of the richest gold veins in history. Darby quit 3 feet from gold. That story isn't about mining. It's about mindset. It's about the tragedy of surrendering right before the tide turns. It's about the painful truth. Most people quit not because they're incapable, but because they're inches away from victory and don't know it. And you will never know when you're 3 feet from your own goal. That's why quitting is so dangerous. That's why discipline is so essential. That's why you must move even when motivation disappears. Listen closely. You don't get to see how close you are. You only get to choose whether you stop or continue. And when you decide to continue, genuinely continue, something shifts inside you. The world feels less threatening. Challenges feel less personal. Delays feel less discouraging. You stop chasing validation and start chasing mastery. You stop fearing failure and start analyzing it. You stop worrying about how long it's taking and start focusing on who you're becoming through the process. Because the truth is this: success is not something you achieve. Success is something you grow into. Look at Abraham Lincoln. Defeated in business, defeated in elections, crushed by personal tragedy, ridiculed by critics. Yet he kept going, not because he felt invincible, but because the mission inside him was louder than the failures around him. Or Andrew Carnegie, a poor immigrant, working low-wage jobs, mocked for his ambition. Yet he refused to let his environment define his possibilities. He built himself from the inside out before he built anything on the outside. Or the Wright brothers. 2 bicycle mechanics with no credentials, no funding, no approval, no government support. But they had vision. They had persistence. They endured crash after crash, setback after setback, humiliation after humiliation. And they changed the world because they would not quit during the silent season. Every name history remembers has one thing in common. They kept going long after the world expected them to stop. But here's the deeper layer most people miss. Your breakthrough isn't just about achieving something. It's about becoming someone. To get what you've never had, you must become who you've never been. You must outgrow old habits, outgrow old fears, outgrow old excuses, outgrow the version of you that was comfortable settling. Breakthroughs require identity shifts. You don't achieve success. You ascend to it. That's why most people quit. They try to achieve a higher life while staying at the same level of self. They want wealth with a poor mindset. They want confidence with a fearful identity. They want discipline with lazy habits. They want success without sacrifice. They want transformation without discomfort. But you cannot stay who you are and reach what you want. Something must die for something greater to be born, and this death, this ego death, this comfort death, this identity death, it is uncomfortable, it is painful, it is confusing, it is lonely, and people interpret that loneliness as a sign to stop. But it isn't a sign to stop, it's a sign you're evolving. Think of the caterpillar. To become a butterfly, it doesn't just grow wings. It dissolves, it melts. It breaks down its entire structure inside the cocoon. It becomes unrecognizable even to itself. That breakdown is not failure, it is transformation. You will have your own cocoon moments. Moments where you feel like the old you is dissolving. Moments where nothing makes sense yet. Moments where you're not who you were but not yet who you're becoming. Most people quit in the cocoon. Champions stay long enough to emerge. This is why you cannot let temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. You cannot allow fear to decide your future. You cannot let frustration erase the progress you've made. You cannot let impatience rob you of what's waiting for you. Your journey is shaping you in ways you don't yet understand. Every challenge is carving out strength. Every delay is cultivating discipline. Every setback is deepening resilience. Every moment of pressure is expanding capacity. You're not being buried. You're being planted. And if you stay long enough, if you endure with clarity, faith, and intention, if you refuse to bow to the impulse to quit, you will reach a point where the breakthrough becomes inevitable, not lucky. Not random, not accidental. Inevitable. Because the world always rewards the person who refuses to surrender their purpose. But here's the truth you need to take to heart. Your breakthrough will not come from one dramatic moment. It will not come from a sudden burst of inspiration. It will not come from luck falling into your lap. Your breakthrough will come from the little things you chose to do when no one was watching. The small disciplines you repeated, the quiet sacrifices you made, the internal battles you fought, the countless moments you kept going when quitting felt easier. You see, greatness rarely announces itself. It doesn't knock on your door with fanfare. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or lightning or applause. It grows in the shadows. It forms in the daily grind. It strengthens in the moments of doubt, and this is why most people never reach it. They underestimate the power of the small, consistent, uncomfortable steps. They want intensity, not consistency. They want breakthroughs without build-up. They want results without repetition. They want the reward without the routine. But life doesn't work that way. Success is built like a wall, one brick at a time. And those bricks must be placed daily, with intention, discipline, and patience. When you watch a master pianist perform flawlessly, you're seeing the result of thousands of hours spent pressing the same keys over and over. When you see a world-class athlete dominate the field, you're seeing years of waking up early, training in the dark, and pushing through pain. When you see a billionaire CEO, you're seeing decades of decisions, failures, recalculations, and relentless improvement. The breakthrough is public. The building process is private. And if you cannot fall in love with the private process, you will collapse long before the public celebration. This is where clarity becomes your weapon. When you know why you're doing something, truly know, quitting loses its power. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop arguing with discipline. You stop letting emotions interfere with execution. Clarity turns pain into purpose. It turns struggle into strategy. It turns pressure into progress. People quit because they don't have a strong enough why. Their desires are vague. Their goals are cloudy. Their vision is blurry. They want success, but they don't know why they want it. And without a compelling reason, discipline has nothing to anchor itself to. Think of a ship at sea. Without a destination, every wave becomes a threat. Every storm feels catastrophic. Every obstacle feels like a sign to turn back. But when the destination is fixed, when the mission is clear, when the purpose is powerful, no wave is strong enough to stop movement. Your clarity must be so vivid that it pulls you through the storms. But clarity alone isn't enough, because a clear vision without disciplined action is just fantasy. Dreams don't come true because you want them to. Dreams come true because you align your behavior with your belief. Discipline is the difference between wishing and achieving. It is the force that carries you through the days when motivation evaporates. It is the daily commitment to act like the future you deserve, not the past you're escaping. People often say they're waiting for motivation. They don't realize that motivation is unreliable. It's emotional. It's seasonal. It's inconsistent. Discipline is the opposite. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't wait for inspiration. It doesn't collapse when life gets messy. Discipline says, I move forward regardless. I act even when I don't want to. I keep going because the future I want demands it. And here's the twist nobody talks about. Discipline creates motivation, not the other way around. Action creates clarity. Movement creates momentum. Small wins create belief. If you wait to feel ready, you'll wait forever. Success belongs to those who act first and adjust later. And this is where adaptability enters the picture. Because if you expect the path to be straight, you're already setting yourself up to quit. The journey to your breakthrough will not be linear. It will not be predictable. It will not follow the timeline you planned. There will be detours, delays, disappointments, and redirections, not because you're failing, but because growth is never a straight line. The people who win are the ones who bend without breaking. They adapt without losing their vision. They adjust their strategy without abandoning their mission. Thomas Edison didn't find one way to build a light bulb. He found thousands of ways that didn't work and adapted every time. Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile. He invented a better way to build one. He adapted to the changing world around him. Walt Disney didn't bring his first idea to life. He adapted, rebuilt, recreated, and reimagined until his vision took shape. Adaptability is a sign of strength, not weakness. It means you're committed to the mission, not the method. When you hold the vision, but trust the process, you stop breaking under pressure. You stop quitting when life throws curveballs. You stop mistaking redirection for rejection. Sometimes the universe blocks a path because it wants you to take a better one. Sometimes the setback is the setup. Sometimes the delay is protection. Sometimes the struggle is preparation. But most people don't see that because they don't stay long enough to understand it. They quit in the middle. They quit when the plan changes. They quit when the timeline shifts. They quit when things get uncomfortable. They quit because they assume the struggle means they're off track. But struggle doesn't mean you're off track. Struggle often means you're getting closer. Think about this. The night is darkest right before dawn. The pressure is greatest right before breakthrough. The storm is strongest right before the sky clears. Life tests you hardest right before it reveals the blessing. Why? Because breakthroughs demand strength, and strength is built under tension. The universe asks, "Are you ready?" And instead of answering with words, you answer by continuing. You answer by staying in the arena when others walk away. You answer by holding the line when your emotions tell you to retreat. You answer by choosing purpose over comfort, consistency over intensity, resilience over excuses. Your breakthrough is a conversation between you and the version of you that refuses to quit. And the more pressure you feel, the closer you are to evolution. Pressure is a sign of proximity. Resistance is a sign of progress. Fear is a sign of expansion. Discomfort is a sign of transformation. You are being stretched so you can hold more. You are being challenged so you can become more. You are being refined so you can receive more, but you must stay. You must endure. You must keep going even when logic says stop, even when the timeline makes no sense, even when your feelings try to betray your future. Because the moment you refuse to quit becomes the moment life starts to bend in your favor. And this is where resilience becomes your greatest ally. Not the loud, dramatic resilience people post online, but the quiet, unshakable resilience that grows in the dark. Resilience is not about being fearless. It's about acting in spite of fear. It's about walking forward even when your legs are trembling. It's about trusting your path even when the ground beneath you feels unstable. Resilience is forged in the moments when you want to quit, but don't. When you want to collapse, but take one more step. When everything in you aches for rest, but your purpose tells you to rise. Most people misunderstand resilience. They think it's about strength. But resilience is not strength, it's endurance. It's the ability to absorb pressure without losing purpose. To absorb doubt without losing direction. To absorb failure without losing faith. Every person you admire has a resilience story carved into their legacy. You might know their success, but you rarely see the storms they survived. Edison faced ridicule. Lincoln battled depression. Carnegie endured poverty. Ford nearly destroyed his first company. Disney was told he had no creative talent. These people didn't rise because life was smooth. They rose because they kept standing when life tried to bury them. You must become the same. Not because it's easy. Not because it's glamorous. Not because it makes a good story for others, but because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to the vision that lives in your chest. You owe it to the future version of you who's counting on the decisions you make today. Resilience isn't about proving something to the world. It's about proving something to yourself, that you can be trusted, that you can stay loyal to your own goals, that you can remain committed when nobody's watching, that you are worthy of the life you want. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people quit before their breakthrough because they break the promises they make to themselves. They say they'll wake up early, then they hit snooze. They say they'll focus, then they scroll. They say they'll commit, then they find excuses. They say they want change, but they avoid the work required to create that change. Your future cannot trust someone who constantly betrays themselves, and that's why discipline isn't just a habit, it's a declaration. A declaration that you will not abandon your own potential. A declaration that you will behave like the person you want to become. A declaration that you will not repeat the patterns that kept you average. Discipline is integrity in motion. And when it fuses with resilience, you become unstoppable. But to stay resilient, you must master one more thing. Something most people ignore until it's too late. Emotional control. People don't quit because they're incapable. People quit because they're overwhelmed, because they let temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. They quit on a bad day. They quit when frustration spikes. They quit when someone criticizes them. They quit when fear whispers. They quit when uncertainty shakes their confidence. But emotional storms are temporary. Quitting is permanent. To reach a breakthrough, you must learn to act from commitment, not emotion. To move from purpose, not pressure. To stand firm, even when your feelings tell you to fold. Emotional control isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about mastering your response to them. When fear rises, you breathe and move anyway. When doubt creeps in, you ground yourself in your mission. When frustration builds, you return to your why. When overwhelm hits, you break the task into steps and continue. You become the calm in your own storm. This is how leaders are born. This is how champions are trained. This is how ordinary people rise to extraordinary heights. Because here's something few people realize. Your emotions are not the enemy. Your emotions are the test. Fear tests your courage. Doubt tests your faith. Frustration tests your patience. Failure tests your resilience. Delay tests your discipline. And when you pass these emotional tests, the breakthrough becomes inevitable. But emotional control alone won't carry you. You must also cultivate gratitude, not the soft, cliché kind, but the powerful, grounding force that keeps you stable during the climb. Gratitude is the anchor that prevents you from drifting into entitlement or despair. It reminds you that progress is happening, even when it's not obvious. It keeps you humble enough to learn and confident enough to continue. It sharpens your focus on what's working instead of obsessing over what's missing. Most people skip this part. They chase the next achievement with no appreciation for the present moment. They move so fast that they forget how far they've come. They compare so much that they overlook their own growth. And comparison is one of the biggest reasons people quit. They compare their chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20. They compare their building stage to someone else's breakthrough stage. They compare their struggle to someone else's success. But here's the truth: comparison kills potential. It blinds you to your own progress. It magnifies your insecurities. It drains your confidence. It poisons your momentum. You cannot measure your journey with someone else's timeline. You cannot judge your progress with someone else's milestones. You cannot evaluate your worth through someone else's achievements. Your journey is yours alone, and your breakthrough will arrive when you're ready, not when someone else reaches theirs. Gratitude helps you stay grounded in your own lane. It helps you recognize the blessings hidden inside the battles. It helps you see that even the struggles are shaping you. It helps you build confidence from the inside out, not from the validation of others. And when gratitude meets resilience, something extraordinary happens. Your mindset shifts from scarcity to abundance, from impatience to faith, from frustration to endurance, from doubt to unshakable certainty. This is when you stop merely surviving the journey and start owning it. You stop fearing delays because you trust the timing. You stop fearing setbacks because you recognize their purpose. You stop fearing discomfort because you understand its necessity. You stop fearing challenges because you know they're carving strength into your character. And with each mindset shift, you move closer to the moment where everything changes. The moment when the door finally opens. The opportunity finally appears. The effort finally compounds. The reward finally arrives. The moment of breakthrough is not random. It is the culmination of every day you didn't quit. Every hour you stayed focused. Every step you took in silence. Every promise you kept to yourself. Breakthroughs are built, not found. And the people who reach them are the ones who learn to transform pain into power, struggle into strength, delay into discipline, and fear into fuel. You are capable of the same transformation. You are capable of that level of discipline. You are capable of that level of resilience. You are capable of that level of greatness. But you must stay in the arena long enough to receive what's meant for you. But maybe the most dangerous illusion of all is the belief that your breakthrough must arrive quickly or not at all. This single lie, this quiet poison, has destroyed more dreams than failure ever could. Because failure doesn't end you, but impatience does. Most people live under a hidden deadline they never chose. They think if success doesn't show up by 25 or 30 or 35 or whatever imaginary milestone they've borrowed from society, they've somehow missed their chance. What a tragedy. What a waste of human potential. Colonel Sanders was rejected over 1,000 times before anyone believed in his recipe, and he was in his 60s. Ray Kroc didn't build McDonald's until his early 50s. Sam Walton built Walmart after 44, and Nelson Mandela waited 27 years behind prison walls before walking out and changing the destiny of a nation. What if the thing you're calling late is actually right on schedule? What if the timing isn't a punishment, but protection? What if every delay is positioning you, sharpening you, preparing you to carry what you're asking for? The truth is simple. Success doesn't operate on your clock. It operates on your growth, and growth only happens under pressure. That's why the moment you feel the urge to quit is often the moment something extraordinary is forming. Pressure builds right before release. The storm grows darkest right before the break in the clouds. The night feels longest right before the sunrise hits the horizon. Nature has been teaching this lesson for thousands of years. But most people don't listen. They quit right before their mind adapts, right before their skills sharpen, right before their faith strengthens enough to handle the weight of their dream. They leave the gym 1 week before their body would have transformed. They stop the business 2 months before it would have reached momentum. They walk away from the craft a year before the world would have finally noticed. That's the tragedy of quitting. You will never know how close you were. And that is why discipline matters. Not the dramatic social media version of discipline. Not the wake up at 4 a.m. and scream at yourself kind. I'm talking about the discipline of showing up quietly, consistently, on the days nobody claps for you, nobody notices, and nobody believes in you yet. That's the discipline that builds breakthroughs, because the real battle is not against the world. It's against your own emotion, your own impatience, your own tendency to interpret silence as failure. But silence is not failure. Silence is incubation. Think of the bamboo tree. For 4 years, nothing happens. No visible growth. No towering trunk. No leaves, no branches. Just soil. People will walk past it and laugh. They'll point and say, "You've watered that thing for years and nothing has changed, but in year 5. That same bamboo shoots up 80 feet in 6 weeks. Was it growing only for 6 weeks? Or was it growing underground for 4 years? Preparing, strengthening, rooting itself deep enough to support what it would eventually become. This is the story of every breakthrough. Growth you cannot see. Strength you cannot measure. Progress that looks invisible. Until suddenly, it isn't. And here's what makes the difference. The person who becomes unstoppable is the one who understands that invisible progress is still progress. That unseen growth is still growth. That the roots matter just as much as the branches. Most people want branches without building roots. They want the success without the season of obscurity. They want recognition without repetition. They want the reward without the routine. And the universe rarely honors that. One of Napoleon Hill's deepest teachings was this: the world has the habit of making room for the man whose words and actions show that he knows where he is going. Read that again. You don't get room, opportunities, breakthroughs, or openings before you act. You get them after your actions prove you're serious. The universe checks your consistency before it hands you the level you're asking for. So when your mind whispers, "It's not working," what it really means is, you haven't given it long enough to reveal the results. Because everything in your life has a gestation period, a time between planting the seed and seeing the fruit. And just like the farmer doesn't dig up his soil every morning to check if the seed is growing, you can't keep digging up your dream to see if it's working. Your only job is to plant, water, protect, and trust the process enough to stay the course. The moment you understand this, you become dangerous. Because a person who won't quit cannot be stopped, not by rejection, not by delay, not by doubt, not even by time. Your breakthrough belongs to the one who can hold the line long after the average person has given up. And that's where your power truly lives, not in your talent, not in your motivation, but in your endurance. Because talent gives you a head start, but endurance wins the marathon. Motivation gets you excited, but discipline gets you results. And dreams give you direction, but perseverance gets you destination. Most people quit because they don't understand this equation. They think success is an event, a moment, a big break. But success is a trajectory, a path shaped by decisions you make when nobody's watching. And your path only becomes unstoppable when you decide that quitting is no longer an option. There comes a turning point in every person's life where the question is no longer, can I do this? But will I continue even when I don't feel like I can? This is the moment that separates the ones who dream from the ones who rise. Because the truth is, every champion was once an ordinary person who reached a crossroads where quitting seemed easier, safer, even logical, and every champion made the same decision. They walked forward anyway, not because they felt strong, but because they refused to surrender their future to a temporary feeling. Feelings come in waves. They rise, crash, disappear, return. They make a person believe they're tired when they're actually capable. They make a person believe they're done when they're just getting started. They make a person believe they've hit their limit when all they've hit is a wall waiting to be pushed through. But you are not your feelings. You are the force that directs them. That's why mental endurance is more important than motivation. Motivation gives you enthusiasm for a moment. Mental endurance gives you progress for a lifetime. Henry Ford faced bankruptcy twice. Walt Disney was fired for not being creative enough. Thomas Edison failed more times than most people would dare try. But here's the difference. They didn't quit when life insulted them. They didn't collapse when others mocked their pace. They didn't fold when results came slower than expected. They weren't fueled by success. They were fueled by belief. Not belief that things would be easy, but belief that things would be worth it. And that belief, that backbone of conviction, is what allows a person to survive the winters of life. Because every dream has a winter. A period when everything feels cold, slow, barren, hopeless. A season where your effort feels wasted and the world feels silent. Most people interpret winter as a sign to quit, but the wise understand that winter is a season of preparation, a time when roots grow deeper, when resilience is formed, when character is carved from pressure. Every breakthrough has a winter before spring. Every success has a struggle before momentum. Every transformation has a breaking point before the rise, and you, right now, are somewhere in that cycle. Whether you're tired, uncertain, impatient, discouraged, or questioning everything, you are still in the story. You are still becoming. You are still building the version of yourself who will look back at this chapter and smile with gratitude, not regret. You might think you're stuck. But what if you're simply being shaped? You might think nothing is changing. But what if everything is shifting beneath the surface? You might think you've taken too long. But what if this timing is perfect? You might think your path is harder than others. But what if your destiny requires a different level of strength? One of the greatest lessons Napoleon Hill taught was this. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Think about that. Every challenge you face, every delay, every rejection, every closed door, all of it contains a hidden advantage that only reveals itself if you don't quit. That means the pain you feel now might be the pressure that produces clarity. The rejection you faced might be redirecting you to something greater. The failure you experienced might be training your instincts, sharpening your intuition, strengthening your endurance. Nothing is wasted when the person refuses to quit, and that's your task. Not perfection, not instant success, not flawless execution, but persistence. You win if you endure long enough to outlast the obstacles designed to test your commitment. Not to punish you, but to validate you, to confirm that you're the kind of person who can handle what you're asking for. Because breakthrough is not random. Breakthrough is earned through the silent accumulation of days when you didn't give up. It's earned in the hours nobody sees. In the mornings you drag yourself forward. In the nights you keep working when your mind begs to stop. In the moments you feel alone, but keep going anyway. That is the invisible ledger of success. And every day you endure, you add another mark in your favor. You may not see the balance yet. But the universe does, and when the scale finally tips, as it always does for the Persistent. People will call it luck. They'll say you got a break. They'll pretend they didn't see the years of effort behind your overnight victory. Let them. Their misunderstanding has nothing to do with your destiny. You'll know the truth. You'll know exactly what it cost you. You'll know exactly why you didn't quit. And more importantly, you'll know that when the next challenge appears, you won't break. Because you've become someone who doesn't fold when pressure rises. This is your edge. Your power. Your future advantage. A person who refuses to quit becomes impossible to defeat.
And here's the truth most people overlook. You don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be the most talented. You don't need the perfect plan, the perfect background, or the perfect timing. You just need to be the person who refuses to stop. Because life eventually bends to the will of the relentless. Look at history. Every revolutionary, every industry leader, every great thinker, they all shared a trait stronger than intelligence and more valuable than resources. They kept going long after everyone else sat down. Edison kept experimenting when the world called him foolish. Lincoln kept running for office after defeat humiliated him. Carnegie kept working in steel mills while others mocked his ambition. Madam C.J. Walker kept building her empire even when society was designed to break women like her. The common thread? They outlasted the storm, not because the storm was gentle, but because their spirit was stronger. That's what creates a breakthrough. Not luck, not destiny, not privilege. Endurance. The strength to rise again when you feel drained. The boldness to try again when the last attempt failed. The courage to believe again when hope feels distant. Breakthrough arrives the moment you've proven you're willing to become the person capable of holding it, not a moment earlier. That's why most people quit too soon, not because their dream was impossible, but because they hadn't yet transformed into the version of themselves who could carry what they asked for. The universe doesn't give heavy blessings to weak foundations. It strengthens you first. It tests your patience. It challenges your discipline. It exposes your excuses. It reveals where you're still holding back, where you're still small, where you're still afraid. But these tests are not barriers. They are invitations, invitations to rise, invitations to grow, invitations to step into your next identity. Think about it. Growth is uncomfortable because you are being stretched into a larger version of yourself. Discipline feels painful because you're shedding old habits that kept you stagnant. Patience feels like suffering because your mind wants the reward before it has earned the wisdom. But nothing worthwhile comes without resistance. And every second you push through that resistance, you're building strength in places you once felt weak. Your confidence, built in moments when you doubted yourself but moved anyway. Your resilience, formed in moments when life hit hard and you refused to stay down. Your character, carved in moments when you chose integrity over convenience. Your destiny, activated in moments when you acted boldly despite fear whispering in your ear. This is why breakthrough often hides behind exhaustion, behind frustration, behind fear, behind silence from the world, behind days where everything in you screams, stop, because that's the final test. The moment where the universe asks, are you willing to claim what you say you want? Or were you only committed when the path felt easy? Anyone can be enthusiastic at the beginning. Anyone can be motivated when the dream is fresh and exciting. Anyone can show up when the journey is convenient. But it takes a different kind of person to show up when the results are invisible. It takes a different kind of person to stay committed when nobody claps for them. It takes a different kind of person to dig deeper when they already feel drained. And that different kind of person, that rare individual, is the one who breaks through, because your breakthrough doesn't show up when you feel ready. It shows up when you've proven you'll keep going even when you're not. It arrives not at the beginning and not even in the middle, but at the moment most people quit. That's why the world calls it a breakthrough, because it's the point where average people walk away and uncommon people walk forward. And you, right now, are closer than you think, closer than your doubts tell you, closer than your fears suggest, closer than your tired mind believes. You don't see the full picture yet, but the progress is happening. You don't feel the shift yet, but it's building. You don't hear the applause yet, but the world is watching you rise. You don't see the breakthrough yet, but it's already in motion, waiting for the version of you who refuses to bow to difficulty. The truth is, quitting is seductive. It looks peaceful. It looks comforting. It looks like relief. But it is nothing more than a silent thief, because it steals the future you never stayed long. Enough to receive dot and persistence? Persistence is the gatekeeper of success. It refuses to hand you a prize you didn't endure enough to value. Success wants to know you'll care for it. Destiny wants to know you'll honor it. Greatness wants to know you're willing to grow into it. And that is what you're doing right now. Even if it doesn't feel like it, even if you're tired, even if you're uncertain, even if the results look microscopic, you're growing, you're strengthening, you're becoming. This is the season you look back on and say, that was the moment everything changed, because that was the moment I refused to quit.